begin before the beginning at the abyss, the zero and nothingness. But nothingness can also be thought of as the origin, the dimensionless point from which all proceeds, or the magic circle itself, the circumference that includes the whole of everything within nothingness, everything that was before the Big Bang. The concept of zero was used and then forgotten or disused a number of times throughout the history of the Western tradition. The Sumerians are known to have it, and the Babylonians got it from them. The ancient Greeks had a zero for a little while, and then they disused it. The Romans never knew about the number zero, and boy, it makes math really hard to do in Roman numerals with no zero. The Islamic scholars in the Islamic Golden Ages, which was in Europe the medieval or Middle Ages, discovered the zero from India. It was represented by a single dot, and it's believed that India got it from China, which uses a circle very much exactly like the one that we use now. So that was when we adopted the Arabic numeral system in the Middle Ages. Not too long ago, really, to have a working number system in the, with a base 10. So that's when we finally had nothing for good. From nothingness proceeds the one, the I, the awareness of ourself. I call this first tier identity. It doesn't really do much other than exist, but it's the initiation of understanding, of consciousness. Okay. When you add 1 to the 0, now you have a system of correspondence of 2, and this really does give us a lot of information and a lot of understanding of the world. The I now beholds the other, or regards itself in the mirror, and we can start distinguishing one thing from another. This second tier, duality, really makes stacks and stacks of correspondences. We can now begin putting things into category, and from here on out, this becomes the absolute obsession of the Western tradition, the putting of things into categories. So we have I and you, us and them, male and female, hot and cold, black and white, in and out, right and left. It makes what's possible the first principle of the scientific method, which is observation. In more ancient times, we called this tier the doctrine of signatures. The doctrine of signatures is where we observe something in nature, the leaf or the animal, and something about the way it looks, its colors, its texture, tells us what it's good for. For example, the leaf of a violet looks like a heart. So from the doctrine of signatures, we would infer that a tea made from violets is soothing to the heart, and it actually is. There's lots and lots of examples of this, and sometimes I wonder if these are really the things showing us what it's good for, or if it's just an easy mnemonic so that we can remember what the thing is good for. All right. The third tier is the elements. So from understanding the self, we begin to look outward onto that earthly plane into the 4 directions, which stack with the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. This system was formalized by the ancient Greeks. We don't find that in more ancient Sumerian and Babylonian writings, but the Greeks formalized it. Okay. wait a minute, did we miss a tier? We went from 2 to 4. What about 3? Maiden, Mother, and Crone. New, Full, and Dark Moon. I would argue that these are important in some traditions, and Ayurvedic Indian tradition has a system of 3 that's very important for their correspondence system. The Celts use systems of 3, and in Hebrew and Christian thinking, 3 plays a large part. But for the Western tradition, it's not used as much, and it also doesn't stack with the other tiers of correspondence. So we could consider that one a minor tier of correspondence. Here's my theory of how the directions and the elements began to be associated or corresponded with each other. If we begin at the beginning of the day, we wake up in the morning at sunrise. We return to conscious thought at this time and what is going on in the nature that is most noticeable at this time of day. Birds are very active at this time of day. If you've ever known birders, they're crazy. They get up at dawn because that's when they're going to get the most birds onto their life list. Birds are, of course, creatures of the air here at the beginning of the day, and they sing. So their song sounds like communication to us, communication and laughter. So we have the correspondence of east with air to communication and thought and newness and joy. As the day proceeds, the sun moves up in the sky, and at noon, the sun, at least in the northern hemisphere, of course, is oriented to the south when it's at its peak. And this is the time of day when we are working. We're out working, we're getting things done, we're in the middle of our work days. It's getting to be the warmest part of the day, and the sun is easy to associate with the element of fire. The color red of the sun is associated with blood, so blood becomes associated with the more heated passions like anger or even violence. So fire then corresponds to the powers of work, protection, and action. As the sun proceeds across the sky, as it heads to the west to set, that is when we are returning to home. We will wash ourselves with the element of water to cleanse ourselves from the sweat and the dirt of the day. We will heal ourselves from any of the injuries, and we will be returning home to those who we love, hopefully. Then we'll be going to sleep and to dream. This is how I think that the West becomes associated with water and things like love and healing. After sunset, the sun is now below the earth, so the earth is the most important part at night, at midnight, and the sun, if we were able to see it, would be oriented towards the north. This is how I think that earth and north become associated with each other. This is a time where we are asleep and returning into subconscious, the mysterious time when our mind is not fully recognizable by ourselves. So it is associated with mysteries. And of course, the earth is associated with everything that nourishes us, the trees, the crops, the foods that nourish us. So everything begins to be associated with earth in the north, having to do with material wealth and abundance and nurturance. We also will be buried in the earth after our death, and so earth and north become associated with death. Some Western witchcraft traditions use just these 4 elements, and I call those the cardinal elements. And especially in the U.S. now, a lot of us use what I call the ineffable element of spirit. The direction is center. And I think this became adopted into Wicca and witchcraft traditions by exposure to Native American traditions and spiritualities, which holds spirit very sacred. Spirit now is often corresponded to the cord, which I thought, well, what does the cord have to do with this? But if you think about it, the cord is what you use to draw the magic circle. So the cord connects the center with the magic circle and all of the elements. From the center springs, therefore, the circumference of the circle, and by extension, the whole of the universe, where all is one from the abyss. This now stacks with the principle of zero, the first non-tier of correspondence. Center also corresponds with time. Think about your wristwatch, the dial that goes around, and its predecessor, the sundial. So time is our fifth element. Okay, any observations or questions from here on out? Anybody learn things in a different way? Was anyone taught Earth is associated with the north because blank? Were you ever given a reason, or why air is in the east? Okay, nobody taught me this either, so I just intuited it. So maybe it's right, and maybe it's just something that I made up, and it's a good mnemonic. From the earthly plane of existence in the element, next the human spirit wants to turn its contemplation upward and outward to the realm of the planets, the solar system. This is a system of 7 correspondences which began to be formulated by the ancient Sumerians. They turned their study of the heavens, and with the naked eye, you can see, while all the stars and constellations, they all move across the sky all together. But there are 7 heavenly bodies which move in different patterns and different periodicities. They are the sun and moon. These are considered planets in this system because we're working from the geocentric perspective, how things appear to us from planet Earth. And they include Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So in this system, Earth is not a planet. Those 7 planets, since they move differently, were seen as being special, being sacred, being worthy of associated with 7 of their most important deities, and being worthy of modeling our life after in having a 7-day week. This is why we have a 7-day week. So this is the 4th tier of correspondence. If you'll allow me a small bit of tautology, the existence of this tier of correspondence, the planets being associated with deities, being associated with days of the week, this tier, and the tier of the 4 or 5 elements, that's what defines what is the Western occult tradition. I didn't know that what I was practicing was this tradition until I started doing these research into how the tiers of correspondence interact with each other. I started doing this because, we're kind of taught about the elements, and we're kind of taught about the planets, and we're kind of taught about the zodiac, and it's all like they're kind of all on the same level, And it gets easy to confuse things that way. Which ones are more important? How do they interact with each other? But if you understand them as being ever largening tiers of correspondence, then it makes it easier to connect the dots and make the use of their correspondences between the tiers. Okay, next slide. The correspondence of the planets to the particular gods wasn't arbitrary. It was based on the doctrine of signatures, the nature of the planet, its color, its motion, and its periodicity. And that determined what the god it was named for. And although the names of these gods have changed throughout history, the essential function of these deities named for the planets has remained the same all through this history. These glyphs up here are the alchemical symbols for each of the planets. For example, Inanna in Sumerian time, she is a love goddess. She became Ishtar in Babylonian times, Astarte for the Phoenicians, Aphrodite for the Greeks, and Venus in Latin and English, and she has always been a love goddess. Enki up here was a god of magic and learning, and his predecessors, his antecedents on up to Mercury also hold this function. A lot of times in Western witchcraft, we try to create this unbroken lineage of initiation that relates us back to some ancient practice that for some reason makes what we practice now more valid. It doesn't really work that way from witchcraft tradition. It was begun in the 50s by Gerald Gardner. But if you look at this is really an unbroken tradition that goes back to 5,000 years ago. This shows what is called the Chaldean order of the planets. Chaldean refers to Sumerian and Babylonian cultures in Mesopotamia. We'll be using that word a lot. The Chaldean order of the planets goes from the one that takes the longest time, Saturn taking 28 years, to Jupiter, to Mars, Sun taking 1 year, Venus, Mercury is the next fastest, and Moon is 28 days. So that is what we refer to as the natural order, or the Chaldean order of the planets. Okay, pretty fun. I like to chant this. Go through all of the names of the planets and chant it. It's really great to attune yourself to the powers of the planets throughout the ages. All right, let's look at each of the planets. Oh, here's the Chaldean order. So Saturn at 28 years, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Moon. Sun right in the middle there, 1 year. 28 years to 28 days.
So, to do what? 28 years to...
Oh, okay. If for example, if you were to go out and look at the night sky and see where Saturn is in the night sky, for 28 years, it's going to be moving a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and then 28 years, it'll be in the same spot that it was before. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Let's start with Saturn. His slow gait across the sky was corresponded to the slow gait of an old man. Therefore, he is given special respect, and he rules matters of time, One of Saturn's name is Kronos, as you noticed. He rules over matters of destiny, long-term institutions and architecture, the buildings and the institutions that are supposed to last longer than a human life, the elderly and funeral, and death. So he's kind of a grim god, but he also has his party side. Saturn is cognate with satire, so he rules over comedy, and it's also cognate with Cedar, the ultimate hedonistic party animal. So in this aspect, I think of Saturn as the elderly relative who tells body inappropriate jokes at the Christmas table. And I'm looking at these alchemical symbols and wondering, where did those come from? How did the Greeks decide to make that symbol? I believe that this one is the sea goat sign of Capricorn, the time of winter and the time of death. Okay? The planets are associated with these magic squares that are called camia. And the 3x3 camia is sacred to Saturn. Why is this? Some of them seem to make sense, and some of them I'm just guessing. I haven't been able to find an authoritative scholar who says this is why. Why do we start with one of three? The nature of these magic squares is that you must use the whole numbers and use all of them and not repeating, and that the columns and the rows and the diagonals all add up to the same number. These were originally found in ancient China, and by some method, probably tradespeople, they began moved into the Western world, perhaps by scholars who happened to accompany the spiced roads. That's my guess. They start showing up in Western occult tradition in Europe in the Middle Ages, end of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. Why do we start with three? Well, a camia, or a magic square of the order 1 with one square would have 1 in it, is considered trivial. It doesn't really do anything. A magic square of 2x2 is an impossibility, because you would have 4 squares and you'd have to repeat the 1 and 2, and they wouldn't add up right. So 3 is the first magic square, and it is given for, the first one is given to our, out of respect to our elder god of Saturn. What are the camia good for? Other than just contemplation, and as I was studying the magic of the planets, I did go through each magic square, and as an intellectual exercise, I added up all the rows, all the columns, and the diagonals, so that I would attune myself to that planet through its magic square. Other than that, these are often used to draw sigils. And if you've ever seen the odd sigils for different demons or angels, that's what they are drawn from, is the camia. In magic, we could create an intention, boil it down to one word, eliminate any words that were repeated, and convert the letters into numbers, and then draw out on the magic square some kind of squiggle, and that becomes your sigil. Squiggle, sigil. So that's what they are used for mostly. In the Greek language and in the Hebrew language, their alphabets, the letters correspond directly to integers, and we use a grid by writing out the alphabet and 1, 2, 3, 1 through 10. All right. Okay, next is Jupiter. Jupiter is the emperor god, and my belief is that he was corresponded to the emperor because he is the biggest planet in the night sky, and he is, and the color is gold, the coin of the realm. That's my best guess. He takes about 12 years to cross the sky, so he takes his time. He's, I guess, middle-aged. Our Emperor Jupiter here, he is a benevolent emperor, and he's corresponded to wealth and expansion of the realm, the empire, expansion of his waistline, material success. He rules over law and politics, and all of these good things in life create joviality or joy. Jove is another name for Jupiter. His alchemical sigil is this number 4. Why is that? I don't know if you've, in many tarot cards, you'll see the emperor depicted sitting in his throne very confidently with his leg crossed over his knee, forming a letter 4. Maybe. It's a theory. So let's see his camea now. Here is a 4x4 camea. His magic number is 4. And again, all of the columns, rows, and diagonals add up to the same number. On to Mars. Mars, he is the warrior god. Mars, the planet, obviously is red in the night sky, and all of these cultures with their different deities associated with the red planet have called him a warrior god. He's often seen in the company of Jupiter in service to his emperor, both defending the empire and conquering to gain more land and wealth for the emperor. He gets that color of red gets associated with the blood of the battlefield. With this comes correspondence of the arts of war, anything to do with boundaries, courage and strength, and the heated passions, lust, and arguments, debate, and surgery is the necessity born from the battlefield. Okay, we'll see his camea is a 5x5, and this one to me makes sense that Magic 5 would go with Mars. It is the palm of the hand that stops the invasion, defends the boundary, or the fist that initiates the fight. And again, the columns, rows, and diagonals all add up to the same number. His sigil here is easy to figure out. It is the arrow drawn and notched, or it could be a phallic symbol. And this is the symbol for male in alchemy as well. All right, now we come to the sun. Sun is more the provincial king. He would be one of the kings ruled by the emperor. And since the sun rules the agricultural cycle of the year and the day, he has more to do with everyday functions of society, like the local government. He rules employment. Since we feel safer in the light of day, he is corresponded to protection, success. The sun has healing properties, and it's considered one of the most divine planets. The sun also has a whole other tier of correspondence folded into it. since the cycle of the sun can easily be divided into two, the waxing phase of the moon and the waxing phase of the year and the waning phase of the year, the solstices, it can be divided into half, and then it can be divided again in half, the equinoxes, and then the cross quarter days in between there. So the sun folds in a system of 8, and that is our 8 Sabbats. It's just a natural way that the circle can be divided up. It also folds into the divisions of the day, owing to the calculations of the ancient Babylonians, which gave us 24 hours, and their base 60 numbering system is also still reflected in that we have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. Here's the sun sigil. It's a 6 by 6, and I like to think of it as the 6 sides of the honeybee's comb. A more solar animal is hard to imagine, or you could think of it as 6 months of the waxing solar year and 6 months of waning in the solar year. The next planet is Venus. Venus has been associated with love goddesses. I am not so sure why the planet Venus took on this association, and my best guess is that Venus is known as the morning star and the evening star, so perhaps it is these times when lovers might be most likely to be enjoying each other's company. That's my best guess. The association of Venus, and this is the sigil, is also the alchemical symbol for female, like Mars was for male. These are retrogressive and traditional binary male and female qualities for us today, but they give Venus correspondences with the traditional womanly interests and qualities like love and friendship, the arts, and pets. Venus's magic square is 7 by 7, and this one does have an arithmetical geometric reason, and it has to do with the number 7 being individual and the virginity of the love goddess. I'll leave you to your own researches to see why this was thought, but it's best explained in an excellent book by Michael Schneider called A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe: The Magical Archetypes of Nature, Art, and Science, A Voyage from 1 to 10. Utterly fascinating. The Venus's 7 by 7 also corresponds with music, the 7-note scale being one of our primary musical scales. Onward to Mercury. Mercury has a period of 88 days, and because of his famous retrograde motion, he seems to be going back and forth to the different gods in the sky, and for this reason he was corresponded as being the messenger service, who goes back and forth from the different planets delivering the messages. He becomes associated with study because he's reading these messages and all kinds of intellectual prowess. He is too busy doing this work and studying to have a love life. He rules over the lifestyle of celibacy. He has a different kind of healing from Mars, the gentler arts of medicine. Because of his rapid motions, he rules over travel. He also has his dark side. When the sun occludes Mercury, Mercury disappears from the sky, So this was seen as trickery, even on up to thievery, the arts of illusion. And this is how Mercury also becomes sacred to the magician as the magician's god. His sigil here shows the classic Greco-Roman depiction of him having a winged helmet as he flies around. And we'll see his cameo next. His is an 8x8, and I don't know, other than just natural progression of the Chaldean order, that he is given the magic number of 8 and given this 8x8 square. This is the only departure from the nature of the magic square. For Mercury's camea, the rows and the columns all add up to the same number, but it is a mathematical impossibility to have the diagonals add up to the same number. And last but not least, probably the witch's favorite planet, the moon. Because the moon governs the tides, the water, it becomes very associated with water. Because of the tides make possible irrigation, and these ancient civilizations depended on the moon and the tides to irrigate their farmlands, and this is how they were able to start building the first city-states in Mesopotamia. Therefore, the moon rules over agriculture, and we still use systems of the lunar zodiac signs to rule how we plant our gardens, how we cultivate our fields. That's still used from mom and pop gardeners on up to major agriculture. Since the moon travels over the night sky, it rules travel, and because it is out at night while we're asleep, it rules over our dreams and psychism, especially psychic dreams. The moon also governs women's cycles, and so the moon, in addition to giving us fertility through the landscape, gives humans fertility through women's procreation. We'll see her cameo next. And it's a 9x9, and this one does correspond with women in that 9 is the number of months that it takes to bring a pregnancy to term. And we have returned comfortably to the tradition of the diagonals also adding up to the same numbers as a column and rows in here for moon. Moon also folds in to itself another minor tier in that the moon can also be divided into halves or quarters. The new moon, the waxing moon, the full moon, the waning moon, and the dark moon. So the moon can be divided out, and using our doctrine of signatures from the duality tier, we can organize our magic to do the same kind of things that the moon is doing. So when the moon is getting larger, we do magics of increase, and when the moon is waning, we do magics of reducing, banishing, exorcism, or cursing. This is where I mentioned it's easy to associate sun with the element of fire and moon with the element of water, but these are the only two planets where the elements really stack comfortably with each other and directly. Other planets, you'll find disagreement amongst the experts as to which element is ruled by the planet or vice versa. So it's not especially helpful. But even when the tiers don't stack neatly with each other, we can use their differences to triangulate to our purpose. For example, if you wanted to do, if you wanted to increase your cash flow, you would go to the planet Jupiter, because he rules over money, and flow is the water element. So you could have some element of water on your element and some symbol of Jupiter, or you could use a Jupiter sigil and write out flow on his camea to create a sigil to increase your cash flow. So this is how you can use these systems even when they don't stack tidily. All right, before we leave the planets for the further stars, let's ponder the reason that the Chaldean order doesn't or seems not to correspond with the order of the days of the week. Because the Chaldean order of Saturn, Saturday, Jupiter, Thursday, Mars, Tuesday, Sun, Sunday, Venus, Friday, Mercury, Wednesday, Moon, Monday, that's not the weekday order. Why is it then? We'll look at this. The reason is the 24-hour day, which was given to us by the Babylonians. The Sumerians had a 12-hour day. And each hour of the day was said to be ruled by this planet. And then, in turn, each hour of the day was said to be ruled by the planet. All right, if we theorize, if we start with Saturn, the elder god, we can theorize that these ancients probably didn't arbitrarily pick Saturn to be the first day, because like I said, people who think and do math like this, arbitrary is not really in their nature. It's my theory that this system was begun, Chronos being the beginning of time. It might have been that it was begun on the first day after the winter solstice, when the sun is in the sign of Saturn. My theory. All right, let's show how this works. If we start on Saturday, the first hour of the day at dawn, the day begins at dawn in this system, the first hour of the day is ruled by Saturn, and the next hour, going in the Chaldean order, is ruled by Jupiter, then Mars, Sun, and it counts down the 24 hours of the day in the Chaldean order, such that the last hour of the day before the sun rises at dawn the next day is in Mars. But then, after sunrise, the next hour falls to Sun. So you've gone from Saturday to Sunday. Then we go, and the first hour of the day on Sunday is governed or ruled or sacred to Sun. And then we start counting through the Chaldean order again, in that order, Venus, and on the way down here, such that the last hour of Sunday is in the hour of Mercury, and then the first hour of the next day is under Moon. So that's how we get from Saturday, Sunday, Monday, by counting down the Chaldean order across the 24 hours of the day. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
This information was explained by a wise man by the name of Plutarch. He was writing in the 1st century Common Era. He was first Greek, and then he became a Roman citizen. He is famous for, his great work is called Moralia. It's a compendium of his essays and treatises on science, on nature, on philosophy, on government and morality, equity, etiquette. Is called Moralia. And this article was where he was trying to explain to the Romans why they should ditch their 8-hour week and adopt a 7 7-day week, like the Greeks, like the Phoenicians, like the Babylonians, and like the Sumerians. The Egyptians had a 10-day week. And evidently he was successful. The Romans did move to a 7-day week, but the essay was called, "Why Are the Days Named After the Planets Reckoned in a Different Order from the Actual Order?" And although this treatise, this manuscript, was lost, so it's not included in modern day editions of Moralia, it was referred to by so many other writers and philosophers and learned people that it's known exactly what it was about. To me, this means that we had been doing it this way for so long that the reasons why the days of the week go in a different way than the natural order of the planets, we'd been doing it for so long that it was forgotten why, and it's just the way it's always been done. But the Romans weren't satisfied. They were like, this is a logical inconsistency, so why shouldn't we keep with the 8 hours? Plutarch is one of the people who would have been a learned person and who would have known why this is, and he made this argument and convinced it, the Romans, to do it. All right, okay, now we'll go to the next slide. All right, this symbol is called the fairy star, but it's more properly called the star of the planets. It is a decoder of the Chaldean order, so Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Moon, to the day of the week order. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This was found in ancient Pompeii as a common graffito, but I think it's a really cool symbol. I created a whole tradition called the Cult of the Fairy Star for our fascination about this one. Okay, now we've spent a lot of time on the planetary tier, and we won't spend as much time on the zodiac tier. So we've now gone from the Earth to the planets, the solar system, and then beyond the stars in the galaxy. Also, I don't know as much about this one anyway. Beyond the solar system, we find the heavens, the stars of our galaxy, the Milky Way. And this is an ancient depiction of the zodiac. The ancient astronomers began to study the stars and group them into constellations, but there were 12 of them that were most important. 12 because that was the ecliptic, which means that is where the sun travels through the constellations. So those were seen to be the one that had the most to do with the human realm, the earthly realm. They divided the night sky into 12, and that was a function of the sundial. And they decided that these constellations kind of resemble one animal or another, and hence the zodiac was born. This began in Sumerian times. They had some of the same zodiac signs that we have, and depicted pretty much the same way. Another very ancient system. We have I'm not going to go into the nature of the zodiac archetypes. They're treated voluminously in the Magician's Library, unlike the planets. But they'll have things, I could say I'm a Capricorn, so I'm too logical to believe in something like the astrology, right? The only reason why I think, why does something so far away as other stars and other planetary systems far out in the galaxy, what do they have anything to do with us? And my explanation is that the planets act as magnifying lenses for their influences. And that's why where the sun is in the sky, the zodiac that's beyond it gets magnified into your spirit. That's my theory. What is relevant about the zodiac tier of correspondence is that it does stack neatly with both the elements and the planets. For example, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and the elements, Capricorn is ruled by Earth. In other words, the zodiac forms both of the preceding tiers of correspondences comfortably and logically. The other relevance is that these tiers of correspondence, they start out very simple. So the identity one is super simple. It's just one thing. I is me and all is one. And then the tiers progress to being more and more complex. The elemental system of 4, we can divide any person into being more air or fire, water or earth. Any plant or mineral can be divided into those 4, but then it can be made more complex by saying, this plant has a lot of water in it, but it also has some air in it, so they can be modified. And maybe you have a plant that has each element represented equally, and that would be a plant of spirit, perhaps. Then the system of 7 is even more complex, because you can divide people into 7 different categories, and then you can also apply the elemental. So 7 times 12 is 84 ways to categorize your theoretical poor person. But it doesn't stop there if you apply the zodiac to the planets. But it doesn't start there. Then you have your Venus in the 5th house, and on and on and on. So the astrology system begins to be so complicated in this way that it is a limit of usefulness to the magician. If you try to go further than a system of 12, say you had a system of dividing things into 40, then you could have 40 times 40 permutations, add the 12 zodiac symbols, multiply that by 12, multiply that by 7 for the planets, and you basically come up with an infinite number of categories, which kind of wraps us all the way back around to saying each thing is its own thing, indivisible, and can't be compared with anything else. That's the system of 12, then, is the last tier of correspondence in the Western tradition, because it's the last that would be useful for us to anyway. All right. Any observations or questions about this so far? Cool. Well, I've gotten us all very spaced out now, but I'm not going to leave y'all lost in the infinite. Let us return to our mundane selves. Feel free to sing along. All right. Back down from the heavens to the planets. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and what's today? Saturday. Here we are. Saturday, here. All right? Air, fire, water, earth, east, south, west, north. And here we are in between all of them, center. 0 and 1. Me and you. Me and you. I am. I think, therefore I am. Nothingness. Oh. welcome Om. Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, questions? Sure, bring it on.
Hi, sorry, yes, I do have actually two questions,
Uh-huh.
and apologies if it's super basic, but the seven gods, is that according to literature or what tradition?
The what?
The seven gods, is that according
Oh,
to?
okay, yes, that is in one of the earlier slides of the 7 planets, the Chaldean order. Let's see. Here we are. All right. In Sumerian times, Saturn was called Ninurta, and then the Babylonians also called him Ninurta. He became El for the Phoenicians,
Right,
Cronus for the Greeks, and Saturn for Latin and English.
right, so I'm just kind of curious, because, again, we were into this, but in Wiccan, I thought it was like the god and goddess were the main one, but do they also follow like the seven gods as well, or?
Wiccans have many, many deities, but these are the deities that were chosen to be associated with the planets.
Right.
And the Babylonians and Sumerians, they had lots and lots of gods, and then they chose 7 of them, either because they were the most important ones, or the ones that corresponded or had qualities most resembling the planet.
Okay, so it just seems like throughout all of the ages, the seven planets were regarded as the gods.
They were regarded as the gods of the planets. Sometimes the planets were thought to just correspond to the deities, and then some people thought that the planets actually were those deities, and that's how they ruled over us.
Oh, okay, so just different schools of thought. And then like the other question is, how would you define it or describe it in terms of what does rule over mean?
Oh, okay. So they're sometimes used interchangeably, corresponding to and ruled over. It means that Saturn governs certain functions or intentions. He rules over funerals, elderly, and the will. So it's his will that and his areas of influence. That's what's
Like he's in charge of?
Yeah, yes, he's in charge of those things.
Perfect, okay. Just wanted to see. Thank you so much.
Cool.
I was going to ask you about retrograde.
Uh-huh.
Mercury, like when you're talking about Mercury retrograde and how jacked up everything gets when Mercury is in retrograde, does that mean it's almost going backwards?
It's an artifact of the solar system.
Okay.
Yeah, I would need to look at an orrery to explain it to myself again, but it's just, it's the way that the Earth and Mercury are moving at different paces around the sun that it causes it to appear to go backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably, I'm sure there's a good YouTube video that shows why it appears to do that based on a model of the solar system. So that's what I would recommend to explain
Your
it.
knowledge is fun. I enjoy all of your math, because I'm a math person too.
Uh-huh.
So, but I kept thinking Sudoku. Like that's where it's completely Sudoku. You know that game?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like,
Is that like the magic squares or something?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's
Uh-huh.
a game called Sudoku, where they give you like one starting number or a few starting numbers, and you have to literally fill in all the numbers to add up to all the things. And I just kept thinking,
Uh-huh.
okay, that's where this came from. I don't know. I don't fully understand most of what you said, but I did think it was